Hello everyone. Have you had a nice summer break?
Yeah.
Do you know each other at all? No. Everyone is new to everyone. Okay? And another question, how do we know that the video started? Like it starts at 10 o'clock or since he was here? I'm not sure now. Maybe when this is on. Yes. Okay. Does it sound any better now? All right. Okay, well let's start. This course is called Money and Banking. I'm sure you're gonna love it. It has the potential to change your financial lives. Seriously. It has no math, no tricky math, no memorization of things and just regurgitating them on the exam. It's not gonna help you. And it contains the very basic facts you need to know about finance to be able to tackle anything in finance, really. Tell you what, it's not rocket science. Finance is not rocket science, but oddly. And there's several psychological explanations to this, why people never kind of pick up on it. Even if it's their profession, they seem not to be able to figure it out. There's all sorts of emotions that are involved with money. So this course draws on my personal experience in this field, and it's really just the practical things that you need, and the facts, and some experiences that I'll teach you, and some examples. And yes, we're going to touch on the psychological things that kind of prevent people in this profession and just regular people managing their own affairs from doing the right thing. Okay? So we can start a little bit about my background. The text is rather small. I promise you next time the text will be bigger. So I was born right next to Tel Aviv in Israel. That's where I was in Tel Aviv University is where I got my bachelor in economics and management. It's a double major. And then I moved to Chicago, University of Chicago, to the Booth School of Business, where I had my PhD in finance and economics. And that was great. And that was really hard work, actually. That was the hardest work I've ever seen any group of people perform in any type of profession, okay? So the University of Chicago, the highest work ethic I've seen on the planet. I don't know if there's anything to match it. Okay, I had 2 Nobel Prize winners, 2 of my professors, they won the Nobel Prize a quarter before I finished my PhD thesis. Okay, so I learned from the best. It was not easy. These people are grumpy. These people like to argue. These people never tell you anything good. They tell you, go ahead and figure it out on your own. What do you want from me? And that's the attitude. And it doesn't kill you. It does make you stronger. But this course is not going to be anything like that. I mean, I'm totally different from that. I'm not into making things hard for you. But there is a little bit of kind of self-learning experience here. Okay? And especially there's not this kind of million homework exercises to cover all the possible topics in the exam for you to memorize and just be able to kind of figure out the exam without ever understanding anything just because you've memorized the equations, you know how to move things from left to right. That's not about it, okay? This does not help you in life. You know what, in life there are very few equations. Okay, there are very few equations in working life. Okay? And I moved to Zurich about 5 years ago. I live here on Limatke on the river. And I used to work for a little tiny bank called UBS. And they don't control the world at all. No, I'm kidding, of course they do. They're a grand monopoly. And this is also one of the things that my course draws on, what I've seen in the bank. I've had a very particular position in the bank, which none that I know has ever had, okay? I met this professor while I was doing my PhD at the University of Chicago, and he was just a visiting professor in between his jobs, and his next job was to be the chairman of UBS, okay? And he's still the chairman of UBS, and when he started, he didn't bring anyone with him, he just brought me. It's kind of a, let's see what you can do, analyst. I have no idea what I'm about to do, just come with me and let's figure it out. And what I had access to is A, everyone in the bank, and B, all the material that is prepared by the executive board, okay, by the management of the bank. A bank is it's like an army. It's a pyramid of people, everyone saying yes sir, no sir, to the one on top of them. And at the top of it, you have the CEO and his board of managers. And this executive board and the CEO, they report to the board of directors. The board of directors is kind of the round table of elderly men. Okay, they don't really do anything. They can stop things or they can question things, but they're really just there to kind of say, okay, basically. But the duty to report to them in very much detail is ingrained in the bank, okay? So all the material of every business activity that takes place inside the bank is aggregated, and also sometimes there's an kind of deep dive, and then is presented to the board at one point or another, and on an ongoing basis. If you follow these, you get to learn about everything that goes on inside the bank. So all the types of assets, all the types of liabilities, all the different business practices, how to make money, and the kind of central control functions of how a bank coordinates this. It's a massive animal with different, maybe 60,000 people working and different business activities in different parts of the world, all the central control mechanisms to determine how much money each person makes, and so on and so forth. So I was just sitting there for almost 3 years and kind of analyzing this in kind of a critical way and giving input to the chairman, who would then take my inputs to the board meetings and kind of try to move outside this status of just being presented with already chewed material and saying, okay, because it's already written so nicely to explain what they do, why they do what they do, and kind of be able to push back a little bit in an intelligent way and in an informed way. And this was my job, if you can call that a job. I made quite an impact, okay? My input made an impact. And this is how I learned about all of finance, okay? This and my education, and also afterwards me sitting down and figuring things out, especially what I'm going to teach you about what money is, okay? At a very real accounting sense, what money is, without going into all sorts of weird theories about shells and stuff, and that's really nice, but really doesn't explain what these Swiss francs in your pockets are. And this is one little fact that not many people in the industry or in the public know, the very basic accounting facts of money. And that's coming up in probably our third lesson. And so all these things together, they build quite an experience that I believe that this course is useful for you, and you're my third generation, and also the first and second generation. They're already giving feedback that what they learned was very helpful for them, especially to get a job and to move up in the world, okay? Because This is not an ideological or theoretical kind of course. This is very practical for people who want to make the most of it. People want to get out, move on to the next thing, move on to the next thing, move on to the next thing, and then I don't know where you end up. But you should be happy about it, about each step of the way. And if you're not happy about one step or another, that's fine too, okay? There's some years that, it's not so good, but that's life, Maybe you don't like this course, maybe you don't like your first year, your second. You guys are second or third year, right? Third. So the third year is a good year. You know what's the best thing about being a second year's bachelor student? Is that you're no longer a first year bachelor student. All right, I got some giggles. Okay. Oh, and I left UBS about 2 years ago, and I've been ever since running my own hedge fund. Okay, so I started this hedge fund. It was basically my investment portfolio, which I grew quite big for just not so many years in a bank taking salary, but even just a few years taking salary, I was able to save quite a bit because I was always into this kind of Rich Dad Poor Dad book. Have you read that book? I never read that book, but it's kind of a self-help, get rich by decreasing your expense, increasing your income, saving and investing, and counting every penny, making sure that it grows steadily, and not wasting money on huge luxury items or big houses, and so on and so forth. So I was really living that, even that I was making a ton of money by any standard in a bank for doing really a 9-to-5 analyst job, and I was no different, and some people there make 4 times as much as I did for doing 9-to-5, and I was still living like I was a student as far as my expenses went, because I wanted to save the money, make it grow. I was investing aggressively every penny of it because I wanted out to do my own thing. I always wanted to be managing my own capital. Okay, that's what I do now. So I went pretty quickly from student to employee to self-employed to pensioner. Okay, if you want to see it this way. I'm doing this for fun, okay? You guys should understand this. I'm hardly getting paid for this to matter financially, and this I do for fun. I also like to put the videos online, and that's what I do for fun, okay? So you need to kind of put this in your brain when you come up to me. If you have some attitude thinking that I have to do certain things for you because university or else, oh, you have to explain to me how this works. The bill. Now it's 15, right?
I think it doesn't actually start almost every hour.
But when we start at 10?
Well, apparently it starts 15 minutes later than the actual hour.
Oh, okay. All right, we'll figure it out in the break. You let me know when you need a break, or is there a break expected in this class? I forgot. From last year we had a break for 5 minutes.
Sure.
But will it ring so I know when is the round hour or something? It's not gonna ring. It's not gonna ring again. Next time it rings is on the round hour? Or 15 before or 15 after?
I think it's 15 before and then the class ends.
Oh, okay, 15 before. All right, so we could take a 5-minute break at 15 before. And this can work for us. We take a 5-minute break on 15 before and come back and continue. Okay? So, yeah, this is...
Sorry,
Hi.
money making?
Excuse me? Yes, this is money making.
How does this come off on
Howdy-o. Welcome. Hello. Where were you? We missed you.
life is in.
Because someone told me you started 10.
No, 10,
15.
yeah.
Okay. We end at a quarter before 12. Or at 12.
At 12.
At 12, I guess, yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's start over. Can I close the door now?
Yeah.
So welcome to you and everyone. Oh, bring name tags, please. Bring name tags, so I know you by name. This is a great room because it's kind of spread out, so I can see all of you, and we can have this conversation. And I'm sure when we get more into the material, you can make this interactive and kind of ask me questions about how you make money this way, or how does this work, or I read in the newspaper, and then I'm gonna explain why the newspaper really is not really relevant for finance. A little bit about my background again. So I was born in Tel Aviv. I did my bachelor at Tel Aviv University. I then got this PhD program at the University of Chicago, Booth School of Business. Okay, it's a 5-year program in finance and economics. University of Chicago, the hardest working people on the planet. Okay, don't even doubt it. The hardest working people on the planet that I've ever seen, and I've seen places. Okay, I had 2 professors of mine on my thesis committee. They got the Nobel Prize a quarter before my defense, so it was the real deal. Okay, these people are grumpy. These people have very high standards. These people, you cannot ever satisfy them with your work. And that's what makes you stronger, okay? And but it feels like ancient history, okay? Since then, I moved to Zurich. I've been living in Zurich for 5 years. I live on the Limatke here, just on this river. Nice apartment, nice view to everything, and great location. And I was working for a little tiny bank called UBS. They are not at all controlling the world with monopoly over capital. Of course they are. And I had a very unique position there, okay? I don't know anyone that had this kind of a job, if you can call it a job. I was an analyst to one banker, okay? He's the chairman of the board. I met him when he was a visiting professor at the university where I was getting my PhD, and he was just starting, and he said, Avi, why don't you come with me, help me kind of figure things out when I start my job. And that's what I did. It was really an undefined role. What I did was just read the entire material that is prepared by the board of executives, okay, the managers of the bank. A bank is like a huge military organization. It's a pyramid. Everyone is saying yes sir, no sir to the ones above them. And at the top you have the CEO and his group of executive managers, and they owe reporting to the board of directors. The board of directors is like a round table of elderly men, of wise elderly men, okay? Or maybe just elderly men. And I was reading everything that the pyramid is preparing to the board, and kind of giving advice on that, giving my opinion, finding out between the lines what they're doing to push a little bit this way, to push a little bit that way. And that's kind of the role of the board of directors. They don't really manage the bank. They're just presented with the work that's being done in the bank, and then they either say, okay, or they push back a little bit and question things. So it takes quite a trained eye to be able to make an impact on a bank and on the managers that they're already doing things in a certain way. Okay, and this was my job, but the best thing about it is that I got to see everything about a huge international bank, okay? Every piece of information, okay? Everything on the balance sheet, on the asset side, every type of asset, every type of liability, every kind of business practice, lending to individuals, lending to companies, lending as a mortgage, lending against securities. What are securities? Every piece of business activity I got to see and think about. And also I had access to every person in the bank. Okay, so I would just, especially in the beginning, I would just reach out to every manager in the bank and just learn what I can from their little sphere of what they're seeing and try to put the dots together. So I really don't know that there are a lot of people out there that have had this broad exposure to every piece of finance out there. Okay? And last but not least is that after I left the bank, I started my own hedge fund. Okay? So this started with my personal investment portfolio, which was quite substantial even at the time, because I was always living by this rich dad, poor dad philosophy, by the rich dad philosophy. And you know this book? It's kind of a how to get rich like airport book that you buy this at the airport and you read it. How to get rich by decreasing your expense, increasing your income, saving and investing every penny, and how this adds up, and how you can be out of the rat race by whatever. Okay? And so I went through several of these iterations, being a student, being an employee, and then being self-employed, and now I'm kind of a pensioner. Okay? So I'm managing my own capital, I'm living off the interest. Yes, it is possible. And this is what I am here to kind of pass on, and hopefully you like it. This is also fun for me, okay? This is not my job. This is my hobby. I'm here to have a good time, so keep that in mind. When you come up to me, some people sometimes they come up to me, they're so stressed and they got attitude and they think that somehow I owe them because I work for the university and they pay the university. It doesn't work that way. And yeah, I'm sure we're gonna have fun. Any questions so far? Is everyone signed up for the course? Okay. Is everyone gonna stay in the course? All right. Nice. Okay, so the point of seeing all these things is kind of different from how most people view things, okay? In academia, you have professors specializing in empirical sciences or in theoretical sciences, even just in economics I'm talking. And that's okay, okay? You need expertise, but there is this kind of, oh, I'm just doing this, I don't know anything about that, but this is really just a neighboring field. It's maybe a neighboring sub-field in the same subfield, okay? And same thing in finance, in the actual profession. You have so many people say, oh, I'm just a private banker, I don't know anything about investment banking. The investment banker would never say that. Investment banker would say, yes, I can do everything. Okay? That's a type of, there's lots of types of people, okay? And, but that's kind of true. And there are many jobs, many positions in finance, and there is really, the similarities between them is much more than what differentiates them. And also as regards the different types of assets and liabilities there are there. People think, oh, stocks, I just trade stocks because, you know, that's what I've been doing. But I don't know anything about bonds. I'm not a bond trader, I'm a stock trader. As if the two things are so different from each other. And the point that I'll bring across during this course is that stocks are more similar to bonds than they are different, okay? And I'll show you this in very few recurring examples. And then if we go through every kind of asset type and business practice, or asset or liability type, and you're gonna see this recurring pattern, and you're gonna see the similarities. They're all basically money out, money coming back, money out, money coming back, okay? And there's always legal agreements underlying these transactions. And then if you go further back, why do people do what they do? and then we can discuss that too. Okay, but we start with what is this exactly from an accounting point of view. You have to put it in a little T-bill, okay, T-bill, like assets, liabilities. You have to put it like that, the before and after, to kind of prove to yourself that you understand. Okay, and this is what it's going to be very simple. All right, so yeah, and this kind of approach will kind of put you in this kind of state of mind that you can go ahead and figure things out on your own. So if you come across any new kind of asset or something that you read about, that you can figure it out on your own with this kind of framework of thinking about things. Okay, especially the very beginning of what is money. I truly believe that this is the most valuable lesson you can take in your course, in your career, really. So you're getting your education now, and I don't know if you probably question, because you're young, you question everything. What is the value in all these things that you're seeing? I'm sure you're taking micro, macro, and econometrics, right? These are the usual sequences. And ask yourself, are these really useful? I don't know. Especially some people really love the macro, and they start imagining that with these theories you can analyze what's happening in the world with the macroeconomy, and then you can make money in the stock market. It does not work that way. It does not work that way, and unfortunately there are millions of people out there that have fallen into this trap, that they call themselves economists, but this is not useful. Okay, this macroeconomic theory is not useful for investing, is not useful for conducting business in the real world. It's just useful for making analysis if someone else is reading them, and it's not useful for someone reading them. So it's kind of a in the air kind of little practice. Okay, but I can tell you this because I was into macroeconomics and I started off this way. So there's been kind of an evolution of what I saw and thought would lead me somewhere, and me saying, this is not useful, and moving to something else. Okay, I did that several times in my life. So this is also a useful thing you can take from my personal experience. Don't be afraid to kind of cut things, but finish things. Don't cut them before you finish them, all right? Well, let's see. Let's wait with all this life advice. No theory in this course. I say no theory, but I'm going to sneak in some theory, but I want you to think of this course as containing no theory, because I'm going to show you the basic mechanics of the transactions. When the central bank issues money for the first time, you never asked yourself, I'm going to teach you in 2 classes, but you never asked yourself, how does this work? Let's say we start a new country and we want to circulate our new money for the first time. That happened in history, right? Countries started at some point. How do you circulate money first time? Yeah, I'm going to show you this. And I'm not going to show you this, it's not going to be a history lesson. It's going to be a very basic accounting lesson. Everything's going to be encapsulated in credit, debit, and a balance, okay? It's like a balance sheet. And this is one of the only assumptions of your background knowledge in this course, is that you do know what are assets, liabilities, and equity, and what's an income and expense and profit, right? You've taken at least one accounting lesson that I take for granted, that you know what is an asset, what is a liability, and what is the residual equity. This is the balance sheet view of things, and the flow view of things, the income statement view of things, income, expense, and the residual profit. Okay? This I expect you to know, because I haven't prepared kind of the background for you to teach you this, and this is kind of builds on that. But that really is all you gotta have in your background for this course. So again, every type of asset, and I'm gonna go over each and every one. Personal loan, a credit card loan, when a bank lends money to another bank, when a bank lends money to an individual, and so on and so forth, and more complicated transactions. Everything will be encapsulated with a little T-bill of before and after. And this will really prove to you that you know what these are, And then every time something comes up that you want to analyze, you'll be able to put it there and take things from the blah, 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 macroeconomy, blah, 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 and people argue like it's politics, it's awful, to very basic facts of where is the money, okay? You gotta be able to answer where is the money, okay? It's very important. Okay, learn how to walk before you learn how to fly. I think I've conveyed that so much high theory out there about inflation. Okay, inflation is kind of a taboo word in my course. You can ask me about inflation. Okay, ask me about inflation, but don't obsess about inflation, because all these theories about inflation, you know what they forgot? To teach you the very basic mechanics of what is money. When the central bank issues new money, it's a credit and a debit. But we're a credit and we're a debit. They never taught you this, okay? Most economists that teach, most academics, and most financiers that practice this, they don't know, okay? But they allow themselves to talk about what will happen to the inflation. They're printing money. Don't talk like this, okay? Don't fly so high that think that you know about the inflation thing before you know what is the basic accounting mechanics of money. Where is the money? Okay? Even famous ones, economists, professors, even famous ones, they don't invest their own money. They go on Bloomberg, they go on TV, they go in the newspapers. They say, the indicators that we follow, or what I blah, 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 blah. And they say words like inflation, they say words like liquidity. Both words are not real words, okay? They're not allowed in this class. You're allowed to say them, but we're going to discuss. You're going to see that they are kind of a mask to say something that sounds intelligent, but actually is hiding that you can't really describe what you're trying to describe. It's like a getaway word that you run away to when you don't really know what you're talking about. So they don't really invest their own money, okay? I know them. I know the greatest. I've worked with the greatest, and the people consider the greatest. And then I work with the real greatest, and the people, the ones that people think are the greatest, they get all this publicity. They don't even invest their own money, okay? How ridiculous is that? That someone goes on Bloomberg, thousands and tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of people, maybe millions of people follow him, know his name. Not just one person, lots of people. But they don't invest their own money. How ridiculous is that? They give analysis about the stock market. They give analysis about the economy. And they give analysis about central banks printing money or not printing money, and they don't even fully understand what this printing money thing is. The people don't know for sure. Some of the professors don't know. And it's not rocket science. It's all because of behavioral biases. It's really not rocket science, not at all, but people have stayed so far back in terms of advancing their own knowledge in this field. It's their field, they chose this field, but they stayed so far behind their entire careers, and it's fine because everyone is kind of back in this career. That's why the opportunity is huge for people who know what they're doing. You can really make a lot of money in this field because of behavioral biases, because money is so psychologically intense. It is so interconnected with people's self-worth. I make so much money, he makes so much money. If I'm not making enough money, more than at least as well, people go crazy. And that's why they argue so much about theories. That's why they don't invest their own money. That's why when they invest their money, they buy certain things that they shouldn't. And we're going to go over all these behavioral biases. That's going to be actually the best class because I sat down and wrote all of these as I was writing this course, and then the next year, and then the next year, and in different phases. Every time I think of a new behavioral bias that people exhibit, I just wrote it down. So I did a really good job in describing each of these behavioral biases, and you're going to see them everywhere. And you're going to see them everywhere. You're going to be able to have at mind what is money, the very basic accounting facts, and then if you know what is money, I'm going to teach you what is debt and what is a loan. I'm going to teach you then what is an equity, like a stock, okay? And all these other financial instruments out there, they're all made from the same building blocks. And you will able to know what each of these are, and then every time you read something in the media which is full of behavioral biases, or talk with some economists or some whatever, you'll be able to see clearly their behavioral biases. You'll be able to put it in the bucket of different behavioral biases that I described to you, and you'll be able to know really what these financial transactions are. And hopefully you wouldn't even have to go into any argument with someone who's right and who's wrong, because you'll be making your own money with this knowledge. That's the philosophy. How's my English accent, by the way? Are you following me 100%? Okay. How many here are German native speakers and how many English native speakers? So do German first? Okay. English? All right. So it's about 2/3 and 1/3. Nice. My German is nicht so good. Nicht so good. Aber I can say "Huchichashti" all the time. In the morning I say this when I wake up. Yeah, we can read this. Yeah, there's nothing political or ideological here. It's the whole thing is like being non-ideological, being practical, okay, assuming that you want to move up in the world, you want to build yourself, you want to do good by yourself and by the people that you immediately trade with, whatever trade means for this circumstance. So it's all going to be based on kind of rational, logical behavior, okay? And this is kind of where I come from. The course is at the MBA level, okay? But MBA, you know, doesn't mean that it's more complicated. MBA could be third-year bachelor, okay? Third-year bachelor is the same as an MBA level, basically, okay? And there's not, also in the MBA you have many courses that don't contain much math, all right? Self-learning guidance, everything that's ever been taught is already out there. I'll be thankful if you come up with some question and make me learn something new by myself. You ask me about this thing and that thing, and maybe I don't know exactly what you mean. I have to go back and give you the answer. If you find something like this, you know you've done good. There is participation in this class, so I allow myself 1 degree of freedom to, let's say, if someone would have had like a 525 out of 6, I can push him up to 550. So at the end I rank everyone by their final exam, and then I just go one by one. If I remember positively the class participation, I bump it up 1 notch. And if not, then nothing, okay? So I have just 1 notch of degree of liberty for class participation. So please bring name tags. Okay? Don't take it for a grade. If the grade is not going to count towards your final grade, otherwise take it for a grade. It's easy to medium difficulty. There's no tricky math or anything complicated. The exam is very fair. It's not easy, it's logical. The exam is factual, it's not subjective, so it's not like open answers. It's kind of a T-bill of a before and after to describe the transaction. And this way I can judge if you understood the transaction. And you will have 2 homeworks as examples. And homeworks, you don't have to hand them in. Or let me rethink about it. I want to do something because I don't want you to put too much work into the homework or the group assignment. There's going to be a group assignment. I don't want you to put too much work into that because it's just a 3. It should be really a 6 points class, but it's a 3-point class because my political standing in the university is not very high. I can't push it up. I've never been good at politics. I've played by politics. I've reached I've reached it very close to the top, but you know, I never was at the top. I was just kind of hanging out there, but never having my own thing. So I had to build it on my own. So I'm building it on my own. And anyways, so I'm taking it down a notch as far as your duties for the homework and the group assignment. Those are gonna be kind of bonus. Okay, so there's 2 homework assignments and 1 group. All are optional for you to do. They're optional. And if you do it, you kind of guarantee, if you do all 3, if you hand in all 3, then I guess you're guaranteed the 1 notch extra for participation. You either get it for participation or by doing 2 out of the 3 assignments. Okay? I'm gonna write this down to myself because I think this is a good mix. So again, there's gonna be 3 assignments, 2 homeworks, kind of individually to do it on your own, and 1 group assignment. And if you do 2 out of the 3, or if you get enough class participation in, then you get that 1 notch extra. Okay? And then basically, apart from that, everything will rely on your final exam. Okay? I used to do it differently, but then in the realization that 3 is not a lot for you guys, that's why I'm changing. Okay. Yeah, still about the grades. I grade realistically. I keep the shape of the curve. So it's the board. So anyways, it's not a bell shaped. It's not usually a bell shaped. Unfortunately, it's more like a valley. It's more like a valley thing. So it's more like a valley thing. There's like at the top there's a little bit of a bell shape, but it's double humped. Okay? There's a hump at 4, and there's a hump at like 550. That's usually kind of the shape. Okay? I don't know how exactly to explain it. I haven't really sat down and interviewed the people to really understand what went through their minds. But you know, I don't flunk people. But if you really hand in a basically empty exam, then it goes under 4. Otherwise, it kind of 4 kind of is the boundary. Okay, does this make sense? I'm trying to be generous. I'm trying to be generous. But whenever I grade it and I see like some people got a perfect score and some people got like barely anything, then it really leaves me no other choice but to differentiate it like this. Okay. So I shift and squeeze it around to be generous. So I don't impose any shape. I let it be the shape that it kind of naturally is, and then I kind of squeeze it around and shift it to be generous. But unless you're totally winging it, you know this expression, winging it. You just like you come in the class, you're not even here, you don't read up on anything, and you just show up in the exam, write like a bunch of not related things, and that doesn't get you the 4. Okay, you need to. But if you've done a solid effort, you can get a perfect score because the exam is written in such a way that one can get a perfect score and anywhere in between. And if you do just kind of minimal effort, you can get the 4. Yeah, and those of you that are really kind of already thinking about jobs and want to ask extra questions about how is it like here or how is it like there, where I can move faster, where I can do what you're trying to do, what you think you're trying to do, because it's like that. You cannot fully figure out what you're going to do because you're not even there yet, so you don't see that path. It's like you cannot even imagine the lefts and rights that you're gonna have to choose from because you don't even see the options in front of you. You just heard certain things, so don't try to overcommit yourself to any one particular sub-path. You can go the path, that's the direction to, you know, the Holy Land or whatever, that's the direction, but don't be so like, oh, I want to be this type of banker or that type of banker, okay? It doesn't really work that way. It doesn't really is like what you have in mind right now, all the different kind of iterations of careers that there are. You gotta try to be flexible and come up to me and ask any question, anytime. Don't be shy. Just come shoot straight up. And I'm a businessman, okay? So I'm very easy to negotiate and talk with. I'm very easy to negotiate and talk with. I'm a businessman. There's a very big difference between, you know, most people are not business people. But I find that talking with business people is very easy because you can you can go to the point immediately, and you can always reach some sort of understanding because there's always this win and win kind of somewhere. So. This I was asked. So another show of hands if you require a special exam before the date. Someone here emailed me, oh, he said he's not here. But sometimes the foreign students, they need to go before Christmas break, so they cannot take the January exam, and they require a December exam, kind of a second special exam. So if there's really demand for this, if 5 students or more need this, then I will set up a special exam for you. This is unpleasant for me because I need to make 2 separate exams as per the university rules. I cannot, you know, for the risk of passing the same questions, I need to make 2 separate exams, so this is not so pleasant for me. But if 5 students require a special exam around December before Christmas break, let me know. I don't see any fingers up, any hands up. Show of hands? 1? Okay.
Maybe for me as well.
Maybe. And you, is it for sure you need it or a maybe? You for sure need it. Okay. And there's another one that emailed me about it who couldn't come to the first class. That's borderline. It's 2.5. Right? And when you say maybe, it means that you would prefer it, but you can still make the January?
Yeah, possibly.
Okay. All right. So I'll ask this again next class, and you've had a chance to think about it and figure out your schedule, and I will as well. I expect positive, friendly attitude. Okay, it's extremely important. No douchebaggery of any kind. Only I'm allowed. All right. 0 tolerance for spoiled brats. Don't come to me with a spoiled brat expecting that. I don't know. Okay, no angry, unexplained angry. You know. This is unexplained negative attitudes or demands, commands at me. Not be excused. They're never excused in a corporate setting, okay? There's a very big change. Like when you go into corporate setting, and that's where most of you will probably go after this, you go into some sort of corporate setting, you have to be much more careful with your personal conduct in such an atmosphere. Because people behave totally different. Okay, you've seen these, I don't know if you read it in one of your psychology classes when they put people as prisoners and other people as, you take regular people, you make some the prisoners, some yeah, then people's behavior changes completely. That's not quite like corporate setting, but there's elements of that, okay? So, first thing is don't sass your mouth. That's the one thing you need to remember. Don't sass your mouth, okay? Don't be a spoiled brat, because it's never excused in a corporate setting. Maybe you don't get fired immediately, but you're on the list. We're getting fired. I'm not like that. I'm a good guy, okay? I'm really a good guy. I'm too soft, actually. I'm too soft. Okay? I don't see anyone here with kind of extreme stress syndrome, but I've had that, so I don't know what good people are going through. I understand that, you know, life can be stressful. And I remember being a student, I was more stressed out than I should have had, and that's really not necessary, really not necessary. So I don't see it on your faces, everyone looks pretty relaxed, so that's great. But if at any point in time you really find yourself worried about what will be, about this grade or that grade, if I can go the next year or not, take a deep breath and sit down, do the homework, and everything will be fine. Okay, proper reference in writing is Dr. Rapaport, in person is Sir or Doc. Okay, class participation is a huge plus. No questions silly, really. Ask me anything. Bring name tags. Okay. So let's do again a little, kind of a bit more of a structured overview of the class, and then we can take a 5-minute break. Okay, this first module is actually, I call it personal finance. All right? And this is, the whole course is kind of structured naturally for you to take to yourself what you need from your financial life. Okay? So you start with your personal finances. Okay? Your money going out, your money coming in. Well, now it doesn't really matter so much because you're probably living on the zero. You have some stipend from your parents or from a job or from you know, some grant, and that is fully consumed by your expenses because it's not much and you have your expenses, so you're not really thinking about your budget and how you can save money and invest it. It's not really relevant for you yet, but as soon as you get a job, and it's best if you do it as early as possible, you can start saving your money. And in this personal finance module, there's two things we're going to go over. One is all the different taxes, pension schemes, and tax deductible items, and ways to save on tax or expense, or whether to rent or to buy. All these different personal finance decisions and different kind of mechanisms for the government to take money from you and for you to play by the rules and save on your tax expenses. We're going to go over all of these. And then the group assignment, which is optional, and again, if you do 2 out of 3 of the homework plus this group assignment, 2 homework, 1 group assignment, if you do 2 out of 3, then you get your 1-notch participation. This group assignment is really great because it asks you to put in a very kind of elaborate, which I'm making quite a bit simpler actually, that's what I learned, but it's still quite an elaborate Excel spreadsheet, all your incomes and expenses, and all these different tax decisions, like how much you're going to put in your Pillar 1, Pillar 2, Pillar 3, tax-sheltered pension savings schemes, which we're going to go over what these are, and save and invest your money, assuming you're already a certain age and you've started your career. So there's a hypothetical person in the assignment, and she's 27, and she's just started working as a medical doctor, and she's making 180,000 Swiss francs a year, and she has so-and-so expenses, and she puts so-and-so in the pillar 1, 2, and 3, and she is making so-and-so return per year on her wealth, and then at what age can she retire? Okay? And that's a very useful tool to convey to you the value of money in terms of work years, because if you do one thing different, if you buy a house or if you rent a house, or if you never invest your money, then how many more years you have to work until you can retire? And what's retire? You don't have to really retire. It's a theoretical kind of argument that you can live off the interest. Okay? That's a good thing. It makes you happier to just live off the interest and not have to work for a corporation. Okay? So personal budget, assets, liability, taxes, retirement planning, and the power of compounding interest is a huge effect between never investing your money and making a good return on your money early on and consistently over the years. Humongous effect on a person's life. It can change a lot of things. You know, when you get into this real adulting, then yeah, money becomes an issue. All these dreams and what you want to do, and like when you ain't got the money, you can't do it. If you got the money, you can do certain things that you always wanted to. Alright? And yeah, there's a difference between people who made the money themselves and the people who got the money by inheritance. Big difference. Okay, and then we're going to move on to the kind of the more the academic parts of it, which are absolutely necessary for you to know. It's the basic mechanics of base money, debt, and equity. These are just the basic tools, and I'm going to show you very basic examples. Like I alluded to, there's going to be like a new country and a new central bank, and we're setting up the monetary system for the first time. How does that work? Well, that's very simple. It's not a riddle. I'll show it to you. You need a board for this. I can't just do it offhand, but we'll get there. And you're going to have to trust me that this basic knowledge is missing in every curriculum, in every university. Tell me afterwards if you have any course, I heard of anyone that knows these things, and you're surprised because they're basic, and every other thing that you are learning. How many of you are studying economics, and how many you finance, and how many you accounting? Finance? Okay, mostly finance. Economics? Mostly economics and finance. Right. And accounting? One.
It's not called accounting, it's business administration.
Okay, but it's like you're gonna be a buchhalter after this?
Not necessarily, no.
But
Accounting is a big part of it, yeah. It's not called accounting.
but there's another thing that is called accounting.
Not as a bachelor.
So how do you become an accountant?
I don't know. I become an accountant.
That's unfortunate. That's unfortunate. Because, you know, I did the same thing, did the economics and finance together. And I said what each and every one of you said when you saw accounting. Ooh, that's boring. I don't want to do it. But the fact is that everything is relying on accounting. Let's take a break. Alrighty, so thanks for coming back so quickly from the break. I think this works because if I get the cue from the ringing thing, then we can go on a break. Otherwise, I kind of get carried away, and you'll see that I like to talk. I don't know if you noticed, but so I think that's going to be a good routine. We start at 12 or 12:15. 12.
End at 12.
10. Sorry, 10.
10:15, but end at 12.
So we start at 10:15 and
Yeah.
end at 12.
Yeah.
That's the rule.
Usually it's like 10:15 to 11, and then 11:15 to 12, like 45 and 12.
So the whole course should take 90 minutes in this time.
I need to see this written down.
It's written down outside.
Oh, okay. All right, I'll have a look. And then we can talk again. Okay, the basic mechanics of what is base money, debt, and equity. The basic transactions facilitating monetary policy. Okay, I'm talking about the policy tools, not the policy theory. Okay, they can print money, what they call print money. They can lend secured or unsecured. They can so on and so forth. All right? There's 4 or 5 of these transactions without going into theory. But we're going to talk a little bit about the effects. It's always like this, that when we discuss a new tool of what a central bank or a bank or a company or an individual can do with their money, either to lend or to borrow money from someone else, and there's always 2 sides to every financial transaction, at least 2 sides, then you're going to start thinking, and why do people do what you are describing that people do? And then we can discuss, and then we're going to kind of go a little bit into why people do what they do, but it's not really theory. Okay? But then if some people get really interested in the topics, and after we have some common background and common things that we've built on, then some more kind of grand things like what happens if they do this too much, and what about inflation, and then yes, you can ask a few questions and I'll try to answer. But then we're going into more of the opinion realm. Okay, so going back to this, this theory thing, is that there's competing theories out there about the macroeconomy and about monetary policy and what happens if you do this or if you do that. And none of these theories are neither true nor false. Okay? You can never say that this theory is true. You can never, sometimes you can say this theory is false, but you can never say this theory is true, because it's not that type of science. It's social science. Okay? You can say things are true about things that have 1, 2, 3, 5 variables, but if you're trying to put an economy which has at least 1 billion variables, at least 7 billion variables, 7 billion people on the planet, and not including the weather and not including other stuff, that makes it, I don't know how many, infinite amount of variables, and you try to put them in a finite amount of variables to make some sort of a model, then you're for sure getting it wrong. So it's inherent in the science that it's not a science. It's inherent in this, what is called economic theory, that it's not a science. It's a social science, which is not really a science, meaning that all these theories can never be proven as true. And that's why people argue about it so much. And that's why I'm not going to go into theory. But if we do reach the stage when we have enough kind of common background about the facts, and then you have a question more kind of theological about what happens to inflation or growth or stock prices or anything, given like the framework that I've put together for you, then I can tell you pretty kind of my theory, or quite closed-ended or maybe open-ended answers. I'm going to tell you, well, yes, you asked like this, but it can also be like this. So I'm just going to give you like more options of how things can turn out. And then you're going to be like, well, really there is no one answer. It really depends on so many things. And so I'm just going to give you a few other examples of how things can turn out as regards your question. And this is just going to keep your mind open that there's so many outcomes that are possible, and you can never say one theory is true. We're going to have one class about the blockchain technology, but not from a technological point of view, from an accounting point of view, because it comes natural after we've explained what is money, Swiss francs, dollars, euros, pounds, shekels, Australian dollars, New Zealand dollars, okay? These all work in the same mechanism, accounting mechanism, okay? No theory. And there's gold and there's Bitcoin. So I'm just going to explain the very basic accounting mechanics of it. When I wrote this course, Bitcoin was under $1,000, and I bought Bitcoin at $400 a Bitcoin, and people in the class were laughing at me. Not laughing at me, but yeah, they had smirks on their faces. All throughout it going to 20,000. And I started selling at 10,000, 11,000, 12,000, 13,000, 14,000. I made a lot of money on Bitcoin, okay? You're looking at it. And that's it, I sold all of it. So I thought a lot about it at the time, okay? So I'm gonna teach you, just because it comes naturally, after what is base money, what is Swiss francs, what is dollars, what is from an accounting point of view Bitcoin. And I hope that you're getting the feeling now that I don't like concepts and I don't like things and I don't like catchwords and I don't like buzzwords. I don't like buzzwords. You know, they come up with a word, liquidity, inflation, Bitcoin, blockchain. They come up with words that people don't really understand what's behind them. They build stories around them. Nobody understands them, but somehow people get excited and some people hate it because the other people get excited about it, and the other people who hate it kind of realize that people get excited about it without knowing what this really is, and then this becomes this left and right political kind of thing. But it all boils down to not understanding the very basic mechanics of what it is that we're talking about. So everywhere, I'm going to try to keep it to the basic facts of what things are. And then as you go along your financial life, hopefully some of you will become business people, either borrowing and investing money, or hopefully both, in one way or another, if it's debt or if it's equity to finance your business activity. Hopefully it's a profitable business activity. And you'll be free of such theory. You'll be able to stick to the facts and make your money and move on, enjoy life. And then this is the heart of the course. And since it's just a two weekly hour course, then we're not going to finish all of this. And but this draws on my knowledge and experience of what is banking. And this is probably relevant to most of you guys because the banks are still big employers everywhere in the world. I highly recommend. Going back to, we were talking about economics versus finance versus accounting. Now we're talking about banking. So it's a very profitable profession, okay? The salaries there are extreme. It's unjustified according to anyone in his right mind. And there's a reason why this is. It's called monopoly power, and we're going to talk about it, but not so much in the theory of it, but just it's all going to fall into place. But going back to just before the break, there was just half a showing hand of people taking accounting, and everyone else is just taking economics and finance. And that's what I did, but it's unfortunate. I learned accounting on my own afterwards. Okay, so I'm doing accounting. Okay, all the books for my hedge fund. The accounting is in my hands. Okay, there's an auditor and there's an accountant overseeing this, but I wrote the program. And the thing is that every business needs an accountant. Not every business even needs a lawyer, but accountants are necessary. And they end up knowing more than the financiers. So people think, I'll just pay someone to do the accounting. That can be very expensive. That can be very expensive in two senses. One is that accounting is really an actual job that needs to be done, that you cannot just wing it. Legal stuff, you have tons of lawyers. You can get a template online and do your legal work yourself, and you wouldn't be wrong. But accounting, if you don't know accounting, you cannot wing it. You cannot do your own accounting if you don't know accounting. And that's why accountants, they make quite good money. They make quite good money, and they know quite good business to be able to then do business on their own. Unfortunately, and I say this because I've done a PhD in economics and in finance, it was a double major PhD, those are not actual professions in the sense that you can now with this do work and make money. It's more like a philosophical kind of background that's good to have. The only real professions you can get is, medical doctor or, a lawyer or an accountant. And that's how it works. So if you have the motivation for it to still get an actual diploma in accounting, then that's an actual profession. You might be disappointed to find out that nobody is impressed with your bachelor, even from a good university, even top of your class in economics or finance. But that's just putting it out there. Because again, all these theories and the return distribution of, what they teach you with all these equations about the expected returns and the relation between expected returns and the sigma and the mu and all these letters, that's not the profession. That's not related really to the profession. It's just like someone that doesn't practice the profession thought about it too long and came up with these. And these theories have been very useful to educate students, I guess. But still, it's not the practical thing that is required to run a financial kind of business and any financial business is always borrowing and lending, okay? You can finance with equity or with debt, and I'm gonna show you that whatever instrument you finance yourself with, it doesn't matter that much because they're more similar than they are different, equity and debt, and that's gonna be one of the things that come out of this. That the ways to finance yourself are more similar than they are different, and commensurately, when you think about investing in stocks or in bonds, then the two things are not really different from that point of view either. Both are good, and you need accounting. Accounting is an actual profession. I tell this to everyone that's asking me what kind of a degree I should do for my master's or what kind of degree you should do for your bachelor. And if you're in this field of finance, you want to be a financier, then yeah, you should take your theory classes of finance and some economics, but that's more like general background. It's like philosophical general background. But the actual work that someone needs to do, and if you don't know how to do it, you're going to have to pay someone expensive to do it for you. And you saw the proportions in this class. There is, this profession is very much undersupplied. Accounting is very much undersupplied. So the rents are high everywhere in the world. U.S., everywhere in the world. You get a much better job if you have an accountant. You get for sure a job, but it's not certain that. And if you're just an economist or a finance major, you think that you will get a job for sure in the banks? No. The banks hire often people with education not even in this field because it's not even necessary. So there's like the vast majority of the bank is kind of regular salespeople or other types of kind of middle management or secretaries. And this type of kind of general education would suffice, and they can make as much money as you can imagine for a 9 to 5. And that's the people that actually hold the bank, doing the accounting of the bank, okay? And these are very highly professional people, but they're all accountants. You have to be an accountant, or at least have the knowledge equivalent to an accountant. You can figure out accounting all on your own. It's possible. I did that. But it's not something that is kind of doable for most people unless you take the proper education. Okay, so going back, this might be a bit of a disappointment because a lot of people who come into economics and finance and they study this and they think that maybe they will be able to get paid lots of money for their opinions about the macroeconomy, but people pay to people to close their mouths and not kind of give their unwanted opinions, actually. So it's quite the opposite. We're going to go over the mechanics of the transactions in every division. So a large bank, they're all kind of divided along similar lines. You have personal banking, where you're a personal banking client. You're clients of the personal banking division. You just have a regular account. a regular account. We're going to talk about what's a regular account. Wealth management, once you become a wealthier individual, then the bank would give you your own private banker to talk with, or there's different kind of service models. And then you will get to see more of the financial products that the bank offers. They will get offered to you. And we're going to talk about it from both sides, the client and the bank. Asset management is a division that's dedicated more to institutional clients' needs. So, large pension plans or other big investors would go to the asset management division of a large bank to get their investments done. Okay, so it's not any different in the sense that everything is kind of in money, debt, or equity, but it's just kind of a different service model and different kind of internal structure of a bank. And because you see different kind of products in each of these divisions, and so it's a natural way to kind of teach you about banking. And then there's corporate banking. Corporate banking is, companies like Novartis or Roche or smaller companies. They have a bank account, they move money around too, and they need certain products from the bank and services, and they get it with kind of a dedicated team that takes care of them, and that kind of resides in a dedicated division called the corporate banking division. And then you have investment banking, which is kind of a souped up version of the corporate banking. Investment banking, you have kind of bigger deals to do mergers and acquisitions between companies, and you have also sales and trading, where the big traders, they would have a trading account with an investment bank, and they would be able to do their trading on the futures exchanges or on the securities exchanges or in the FX markets as they need, and we're getting really very close to the market itself. And that's investment banking. So investment banking is actually divided into two, like sales and trading and regular investment banking, what's it called. I'm going to explain the transactions practically. Every transaction that I'm going to explain to you will be accompanied with a T-bill of the before and after. So I'm going to put it in accounting facts, what I'm talking about. It's not going to be like now, because now it's just an introduction, okay? It's going to be very real and very simple, and there's not any equations and there's not any tricks. And yeah, a little bit of the economics behind the transactions. And then the central control functions, and that's in a continuation course. I've never reached that in this one course. When I sat down to write this, I didn't know, I wasn't aware of 3 points or 6 points, or I didn't know, I thought that, So I wrote up the rest of it, which is, so if we've gone through the different divisions, we can also talk about how the bank as a whole coordinates its different divisions. Okay, central control functions, risk control, capital control, liquidity control, group treasury, right? Banks borrow money themselves in a huge way, and we're going to talk about that. This is another thing people are not fully aware of. To what extent are the banks leveraged? You do know that all the money that we, the public, have deposited with the banks, what you have in the bank, this is a source of financing for the bank to take and then lend onwards for a profit. Okay, so our deposits are basically a loan to the bank. Okay, and the bank also finances itself in additional ways. This is kind of the core financing instrument, our money. Just imagine if I am a hedge fund manager, if I could borrow so much money like the banks for 0 interest rate, then really you don't need to be a genius to make money on that. You invest it in real estate or in other types of instruments, you're gonna make money for sure. You don't need to be a genius to make money if you can borrow so much money at zero interest rate. And that's what they're doing, and that's what they've always been doing. And in addition to that, they issue bonds. So they borrow even more money from the public, but this time it's kind of fair and square because the public can decide whether it's going to buy into these bonds or not. But as regards our deposits, we don't have any other place to deposit them. So we are forced to lend our money to the banks. And this is the source of the grandest monopoly in human history that's been around for a very long time. And there's a very simple solution to that, which I've been talking about since for a long time. And it's related to the Fall Guild, you know the Fall Guild initiative, the Full Money initiative. It's related to them. Unfortunately, they got it totally wrong, but there is a very neat kind of middle path that everyone can be happy, and we can kind of bypass the banks, but we need another 2 lessons to get there. We need another 1 or 2 lessons to get there. We get there. And then crowdfunding. After we discussed all of this, actually maybe somewhere in the middle, we jumped to crowdfunding. And this crowdfunding is a word, peer-to-peer. Have you heard about this crowdfunding? You can go online, and if you need a loan, you can fill out the forms and upload your documents, your income statements, and what you get from your parents, what you get if you have an asset, a house or something. And then they consider it, and then maybe you get a loan. And then where does the money come from? From other people, other users of this peer-to-peer crowdfunding platform, or I like to call it loan broker. They're just a loan broker, and they're just brokering loans, much like the banks do, but with one critical difference, which relates to risk. It's called difference, and I'll explain, is the difference between on-balance sheet risk, as with the banks, or off-balance sheet risk, as with these loan brokers. I'm going to explain factually what's the difference. You don't have to memorize anything, but we'll get there. And the main point is that any asset that can be originated by a bank, a loan to an individual, or a loan to a company, or a loan with these types of covenants or those types of covenants, or an equity investment into some company, any type of financial asset, they're all the same more than they are different. That's the main point. That's the main point. And similarly, it's the same type of asset, whether it's originated by a bank or whether it's brokered online by what's called, I like just to simply call it, by an online loan broker. Okay? And I invest my funds capital a lot via these loan brokers. Okay? It's not a gimmick. But they're simply offering good rates of return. They're good assets there. So I can get 12, 13% net returns, diversified all over the world, lots of it backed by real estate. Some of it is unsecured directly to individuals, but is diversified over maybe 100,000 borrowers, so it averages out, so it's kind of very safe. And these assets you cannot get in the securities market. If you look at junk bonds, you get almost 6%. All the returns I'm quoting in dollars, okay? There's a difference between dollar returns and euro returns. I don't know if we get there, but that's the point. Is not that I am a big proponent. I am a big proponent of this because it's a good thing. I see good things coming from this service model, but I'm a rational being. I invest there not because of some ideology, but because of my experience and what I see is the possible things to invest out there. Then I see good deals coming up there. And yeah, I'm also in the stock market, in the bonds market, in the futures market. I'm everywhere, okay? Everywhere that there's good returns, my capital is deployed in a passive way, okay? when I describe what, if I'm trying to describe what I do in my hedge fund, it's really not trading in and out, and certainly not trading in and out based on chart patterns. We'll talk about that when we reach the behavioral bias part. People, this is there's two grand behavioral biases. One is inaction. Basically, you don't do anything. If you're just making money, you never invest it. Or if you're bequeathed by inheritance some business or some stock position, then you never sell it, even that if you had cash, you would never buy it. So that's inaction bias. That's by far the biggest behavioral bias out there. And then the people who do venture into investing their money, they almost always go for the technical analysis. They go for the charts of some stocks, and they read in the news, and then they try to put the things together, the chart and the news, and they end up making big mistakes. And that's the second biggest. And the thing is that you wouldn't expect this, but this is worldwide. Everywhere on the planet, in every culture, people are drawn to this technical analysis and tend to believe that this contains more opportunity and information than it really does. And I have a very nice way to illustrate this too, but we need to get there. Terminology. There's lots of terminology. I'm sure already I've said many terms that you weren't familiar with, but you gave me a break because I promised that I will explain as I go with very concrete examples. So I hope you give me the credit that everything will be concretely explained, but the terminology is not going anywhere. And you need to put the terminology in your brain because it's part of this profession. So if I'm trying to describe to a colleague of mine or a partner of mine or a co-investor of mine what this deal is about, the only way that I can explain this over the phone is using terminology, concisely. Okay, so the terminology it came up because this profession is abstract, and there's so many different ways of doing very similar things that this kind of plethora of terminology came up. And the nice thing is that it's all online. It's all very clearly defined, almost always very clearly defined what I'm talking about. And then if I say some terminology, then you can find out. But the whole point of this course is not to learn the terminology, is to learn the basic T-bills to actually illustrate factually what these transactions are. Okay? So I'm trying to tell you that terminology is not important. You don't need to memorize it. Just understand what the transactions are. But actually, you cannot run away from it because after you get it, you're gonna still need the terminology. And to get it, you need to build the terminology because it's necessary to convey, to communicate. It's part of the communication between the people. The terminology, it's necessary. But the one thing, the other word, which is a taboo word in my class. Of course, you're gonna catch me saying this word, liquidity, and then you're gonna say, "Hey, Avi, you said you're not allowed to say this word," but I'm allowed because liquidity is the most abused word in finance. People, when they go on TV and they are these types of commentators that don't even invest their own money, but they get a salary and their lives depend on saying something smart on television because the bank sent them or whatever, because this is part of entertaining the clients. They have to make some commentary about what happened. But they can't really explain it because, sometimes you can't really explain things. In hindsight, you can almost always explain things, but even in hindsight, it's not easy to explain things. And they're asked to predict the future, which obviously they can't. They would use the word liquidity a lot to explain things that they can't even explain themselves. They would just throw in the word liquidity, but liquidity, the only liquids in finance are cold drinks, hot drinks, beer, wine, and spirits, right? The distilled beverages. These are the only real liquids in finance, okay? Just an example, the central bank is providing liquidity. You must have heard that. People say that all the time in the media, but journalists don't know what this means. Economists don't even fully know what this means. Microsoft is a very liquid stock. This you could easily kind of understand. It means that there's enough buys and sells. Enough people want to buy and sell it, such that if you have it and you want to sell it, then you can easily convert it to cash without impacting the market price too much. So that's the kind of the source of liquidity. How easily you can convert whatever assets you have into cash. Okay, that's kind of definition of liquidity, but it's completely abused. So if you hear someone and you suspect that he is faking it until he's making it, and he says the word liquidity a lot, just ask him, hey, don't just say liquidity. What do you actually mean? And see if he starts wearing clothes. Right? But feel free to do this to me, because everything I say is backed by facts. And if I say something that you didn't understand, it's probably because I didn't fully explain it. But I can definitely take the time and explain it better. Once I get comfortable with this board, then also with these T-bills, that's going to make things very, very understandable. And that's one of my talents in teaching, is to teach things very simply. So I've been able to teach people with no background finance. Okay, and now we go into this first module. It's a fun module because you can really think about your future. You can really start thinking about what you're doing in this life in terms of your finances. You can, because it's a lot of it is imaginary at this stage. You don't know how much money you'll be making. You don't even know how much money people realistically make out there for different professions. But I can tell you what bankers make. I can tell you what accountants make. I can tell you what lawyers make. I can tell you what teachers make. I can tell you what financiers make if they get enough capital entrusted to them. A lot. Budget, okay? So when we're talking, and by the end of this week I'm gonna upload this group assignment, and I'm gonna simplify it. So I'm gonna take a couple days to simplify it from past years, because it was too complicated actually to be as useful as I hoped it would be. It's useful for me, even for myself. I started this whole thing by doing everything that I'm teaching you, I did for myself. Okay, that's how this whole thing came to be. So it's not like something that I was told to teach. Okay, so everything is coming internally from my experience. Okay, so I did this for myself. Okay, as soon as I started making money, I was like, sheesh, what is this money really worth? What is the end? What is the end to this? How much? What can I do with this money? I know I need to invest, and I see my expenses. So you start with your budget. Even you guys have the budget in mind. You know how much you're spending on rent, and you know how much you make in from your stipend, from either your parents or your grant, or some side job. You know how much you budget. That's intuitive for everyone. And so just keep in mind this Excel spreadsheet. Try to have an Excel spreadsheet already in your mind. And the struggle is to always make it simpler and simpler, because there's many different kind of modules here. All right, but think of like every row being a year, and the left side is the beginning of the year, the right side is the end of the year, and every column in that row is either plus or minus an amount of what your income or expense is and what your taxes are, and so on. And then you start at this beginning of the year, and then this is your wealth at the end of the year. And some of this is like investment gain, your return on your accumulated wealth. And then the next row is the next year, and your beginning wealth is just the value that you had at the end of last year. That's your beginning of the next year. And then you add, subtract your incomes and expenses, and so on and so forth. So just have this kind of in mind. So this lifetime budget is meant to be a realistic and conservative projection of what this, of your life. You can then adjust it to your life circumstances, but it's kind of standardized in the group assignment to, again, to this person. She's 27, she started a medical, working as a doctor, she's making 180,000, she has 70-something thousand francs a year expenses, and so on. So you start with a budget, and we're going to talk also about taxes and how the pension systems and how different insurance schemes work. And the main thing is not to memorize how the system is in Switzerland. The main thing is to understand that these different mechanisms for it's all about pooling money into one pool of the insured individuals. So that's the same thing for a pension plan and for health insurance. You pool money and then people get based on their claims. So money coming into a pool, money coming out of the pool, and how you as either a contributor to the pool or a retiree taken out of the pool interact with the pool, which is the pension fund. So the different mechanisms of how to decide how much each person needs to put in and how much each person gets out. These basic mechanics is kind of a finite tool of how to do it. Okay, and then each country just chooses the right mix for that works for them, or they have different issues with funding. Okay, so some countries are richer than others, and some then they would have more or less as an accumulated deficit or surplus in the pension plans. So in Switzerland the situation is good. So the Social Security has kind of enough money to be able to pay what it promised to pay the people, but in other countries it's not so good. So it's not really the difference in what is a pension plan between the two countries. It's just how much people put in, or the different parameters that they chose, and how they invested their money that led to this different results. But the instrument is the same. And so if you'll be able to figure all these out, because they're all just systems with rules, and you just figure out the rules, and then you can play by the rules. And that's all you need to know. And you wouldn't have to pay so much money to handholders. Okay, so if you have money in your pension plan, if you want to take it out but you don't know if you're allowed, and so on, or if you're setting up a company and you want to make sure that you don't overpay taxes, that you're doing it right, then if you know the rules, then you don't have to pay so many tax lawyers. And yeah, you can save a lot on your legal expenses, but you cannot save so much on your accounting expenses. So that's the difference between the two professions, being a lawyer and accountant. You don't really need a lawyer. Of course, you end up paying lawyers because there's some things that are too complicated for you to write the whole agreement, but you really don't need lawyers nearly as much as you need accountants. And then the accountants, you cannot replace them. And all sorts of brokers, sales brokers, then you'd be amazed at how sophisticated people hold themselves up to be. But they end up paying insane amount of money to people, all sorts of brokers and lawyers, that they really don't need to pay this if they just sat down and did the homework, but they were just kind of convinced into this. The problem is if you try to do something you don't know exactly how to do it, you need to ask people. And then if you go to a lawyer, then you're gonna get the version of the truth, not the truth. And then that's all gonna be in order for you to be compelled to hire him. And that's fine, that's legitimate. So what you do is just you hang up the phone, you call up the next lawyer. And you can go through 10, 20, 30 lawyers in 2 days. And then you can find your answers and you know everything on your own. You don't even need to pay them. Okay, I just saved you a lot of money, by the way. Think of different phases, even that it's not going to go into your, it's going to be in your Excel spreadsheet. There's a time when you're a student and you're not making money. You're a young professional, you're making kind of an introductory salary. And then when you become a full-blown professional, you're making a lot more money. So it's again a matter of seniority. It's a matter of kind of corporate politics. Okay, you need to stay there a long time. You need other people to accept you as the manager. You cannot just come in and become the manager. You cannot, if you have a baby face, it cannot just be expected that the other people would accept you as their manager, even you know more and so on. It's not going to happen. So knowledge and talent really plays a much smaller role than people tend to think straight out of college. Okay, the positions are monopolized. Okay, someone having a high-paying job is not going anywhere. Okay, and you are given the vibe that you want to move up, but you kind of don't even see him sitting right there. Guess what's going to happen to you? Bad things, because he has power. Okay, corporate politics. Corporate politics is something that you must understand, you must respect, you must play by these rules, and you must break the rules when it's allowed to break the rules. Okay, that's how it works. Is a jungle out there. Okay, when it's like the prisoners in that game. Okay, people change their entire behavior once they put into this pyramid. You find yourself in this pyramid. Your things that can come out of you that you like and you don't like, both things that you like and things that you don't like. Okay, and you're gonna see things coming out of other people that you've never believed that people would behave this way. Okay, it's like going back to kindergarten, but in a jungle and with money, and people thinking that their lives depend on it because it's money again. All right, so that's when going from a young professional to a professional, that's what you're gonna need to accomplish. You can be an independent, okay? That's a lot harder. And then when you're a retiree, you're living off your accumulated capital. Okay, and the easiest I found to make your spreadsheet the part of the budget, right? So think about it as, because the main thing we're interested in is the kind of the inter-yearly, kind of your lifespan, your lifetime budget. So for your entire, so every row would be a year, but you would need something for your yearly expenses. So how much money you spend in a year on food and rent and so on. So you would need kind of a side calculation to count these things. Most people never do this their entire lives. Never make an accurate budget of how much they're spending. You ask someone, how much are you spending a year on your travel, on first the rent, your food, your restaurants, your travels, all your insurances, all your lawyers, your clothing, your gifts, your everything, your car, your laptops, your iPhones, things you love, all right? People will be off by 50%. People don't know how much they're even spending. It's a huge behavioral bias. So it's good for you to sit down and do this once in a very comprehensive way. It's easy to do this on kind of daily or weekly items, so you probably go to the grocery store once per week, but you kind of go to the cafeteria every day. And so you should have like a daily column and weekly column or monthly. Mostly everything can be encapsulated in monthly items or yearly items. So you go on vacation, like say, I don't know, 4 or 5 times a year, or I don't know how much. And these cost realistically, I don't know, $1,000 every time you go on vacation. Now the Swissy dollar is almost 1 for 1, so I can say dollars, you can think of Swisses. And then the monthly item, you pay rent monthly, and so on. Okay? These are different items. Rent, the utilities bill, the Nebenkosten. Okay, if you get a roommate or if you rent out an extra room on Airbnb, I highly recommend this. I did this when I was a student and even when I was a young professional. I got an extra room and I rented out. Even and now I still do it. So we rented another room, same floor where we live, very central on Limatke, and we rent it out full time on Airbnb for a profit. So no capital consumption. We didn't need to buy the apartment. We just rent it out, and then we let it out daily or 2 nights or 3 nights or whatever on Airbnb for a big profit. All right, so you can do that. I highly recommend it. You can make another, I don't know, $500 or $1,000, depending on what you're doing. The thing is that it's easy to do if it's right next to you. Okay, so that's how big real estate people started. That's how all of them started. All right, a cleaning lady, that costs money if you have one. Put it in your Excel spreadsheet, see how much it makes a dent. All right, gasoline. Gasoline is not really a big expense at all if you have a car. Phone, your online international calls, because that's sometimes cheaper to do online. Your soaps, your shampoo, your dishwasher, your toothpaste, your toothbrush. Get your toothbrush and your toothpaste online. You can get it from eBay. You can get the Colgate. You can get for a third the price. You can get 200 toothpastes. You're good. You're set for life. Right. Transportation tickets, unavoidable if you ride a car. Switzerland, you get your 40 francs every month. Almost, not every month. You can get it down to every 2 months, but not very much lower than that. Your internet costs, your electricity bill, your dry cleaning. Okay, your white shirts need to be Googled. Love this word Googled. It's my favorite word in the Swiss language, Google. It's not a language, it's a dialect. I like the most to say, but this is ungeboogled. It's not Googled correctly. That's a word that I made up. Okay. And unexpected. Okay, you need to put something for unexpected costs at the monthly frequency. So every month you're hit with something you're not expected. Just put something there. Kids. Okay, click this button and you can find out what the average kid costs to raise in Switzerland. There's a number. Okay, on average you can spend more or less. Right, quarterly items. So I did this first when I was in the PhD program, when I was studying in school, like you. So I had the quarterly expenses. Nowadays I don't have expenses at the quarterly kind of frequency, so I don't have that kind of sheet in the Excel spreadsheet. But yeah, you need to pay your books every quarter. Right, you do the semester. In the US it's quarter system. Okay. And every 3 months you get a medium severity ticket, like 120 francs. But those are disappearing. You don't have to get these. Alright, the yearly items. So now we go until when? Or it's over? It's over. Alright. So see you next time, guys. Nice. I'm happy about you.